Hey there, Python trainer Reuven Lerner here, and today I want to take you step by step through a small but real data science project that I did with Bamboo Weekly just a few days ago, asking questions, getting answers using Pandas. But I did not write the queries in Pandas myself. Rather, I asked ChatGPT to write the queries for me. And then I had ChatGPT use its Notable plugin to write the code and execute the code. Did it succeed? Sort of. I will tell you that the queries that I set up and that I executed all did their job at least once. But because ChatGPT is never going to give you exactly the same answer each time that you pose a query, that you enter a prompt, well, sometimes it'll work well and sometimes it won't. So this video, which I admit is going to be a little long, is going to walk you through what I did, how I did it, and what we might change in order to make it work better. So first of all, let me just give you a little background. Bamboo Weekly is my newsletter on Substack. I would say I take a topic from the news and a feature of Pandas, and I mush them together. So every Wednesday I post questions having to do with a topic in the news. Recently, I've looked at grain exports from Ukraine. I have looked at fuel prices across the world. I've looked at egg prices in the wake of inflation. And then I say, here's a public data set. Let's examine that data set, but let's use Pandas to do it. So I've looked at all sorts of different things. You can get to it at bambooweekly.com. Great fun for me to write. Hopefully, great fun and lots of learning for you to use it. So basically, I posed a whole bunch of questions in Bamboo Weekly just a few days ago about the US debt ceiling. As I record this on midday Sunday, May 28th, it looks like the debt ceiling crisis in the US has been resolved or mostly resolved. We will see. But I wrote a little bit about the debt ceiling and then I said, let's find some information about the US federal deficit. And let's find a data set and then let's ask ChatGPT to handle all this for us. Okay, so what are we going to do here? Well, I actually posed a bunch of questions as I usually do. What I did not say, but which is perhaps obvious in retrospect, is that these questions were the queries that I used in ChatGPT. So how do I set this up? Well, I'm going to go to ChatGPT here. I'm just going to make my window a little bigger. Okay, so as you can see at the top of the page, I can use ChatGPT 3.5, which is the old version, or ChatGPT 4, GPT-4, that model, and I can choose the plugins option. And now if I look down here, you'll see a blue check mark. And then suddenly this menu appears of the different plugins that I have chosen. Note, all this will only work if you're using ChatGPT Plus. That is to say the paid version. It's $20 a month. I know that for some of you that is not affordable. For other people, it's like a joke. Clearly you can afford it. Whatever your circumstances, I hope that this will give you some insights into how things work and you can at least vicariously see what's going on. So I have chosen 3 different plugins for the GPT-4 model. You'll see that I actually chose more than that, but only three plugins can be enabled at any given time. So I've chosen World News, I've chosen Notable, which we're going to be using, and I've chosen Zapier. We are only going to be using Notable in this particular set of queries. I should also add that when using the GPT-4 model, it is slower than 3.5. It also limits you to only 25 queries every 3 hours. So I had to structure my queries such that I wouldn't go over that. And one sneaky trick you can do is actually to copy and paste more than one thing at a time. And that is actually what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to copy my 2 questions here. And I said, create a Jupyter notebook. In that notebook, create one Pandas data frame with the amount of federal debt at, and then we're going to get data from a URL. Use Seaborn to plot the total federal debt over the last 3 decades. The x-axis should represent time. The y-axis should represent the amount of debt. Analyze the plot in Markdown just below the plot. So I'm going to paste this in. Now think of what a person would do given this. We would say, okay, I've got to create a Jupyter notebook. I've got to go retrieve from that URL. I guess I can use read CSV, assuming it's in CSV format, and I can download it, right? You might know that read CSV, the Pandas read CSV method, can take a URL, not just a file name, and we'll retrieve it. And then, oh, we want to plot it. Well, we're going to have to figure out which is the date and which is the data. But if I give this to ChatGPT, it's going to know that it needs to use Jupyter. If it needs to use Jupyter, it's going to use Notable. Now I should add, share a link to this chat. Oh yeah, this is a new thing that ChatGPT does where you can share a link to these different chats. I will do that maybe in the YouTube notes. I should add that I needed to log in and get or I needed to get an account at Notable. It's completely and utterly free. There are some limits on how much data and how much memory you can use because it is using a small instance of Amazon's EC2, but for our purposes, it's not going to be an issue. And so basically, when I say to use Jupyter or anything having to do with data, ChatGPT knows, oh, I should use the Notable plugin for that. And it's going to then download that data. It's going to create a data frame, and then it's going to plot it. And it's going to plot using Seaborn as I requested. And then it's going to analyze the plot. Now, what's really going on here behind the scenes? Let's take a look. You can actually open up this used Notable or using Notable, and you can take a look at the code that it's sending. So the first JSON it's using is it's just saying, hey, create a new notebook name. And it actually figured out what to say. It said, hey, let's call this Federal Debt Analysis. That's not a bad name. And then it creates a new project and a file. Okay, very good. And then, oh, it used Notable again. What did it do? Whoa, that's a lot of stuff. Well, it downloaded the CSV file. And how did it do that? It said import pandas SPD, import seaborn, import matplotlib.pyplot. So it's going to import all this stuff. From daytime, import daytime. So it's importing all this stuff. We're going to see this much more nicely in the notebook itself in just a moment. But you can see that it's creating code. It's writing Python code. It's creating all this data here. All right, so let's take a look at where it is now. All right, it did a third thing. And that third thing is to then, let's see. It set the style of the plot and it created the plot. And the fourth thing it's going to do is it's going to do an analysis. Now, any data scientist worth their salt could do this too. But what's amazing is that you can say, hey, ChatGPT, I want you to do this. And it goes, creates the code, and runs the code. Excuse me. And it says, I've created a Jupyter notebook or perform the requested analysis. Here's the link. But you know what I can do? And it says, I fetch the total amount of federal debt. Let's just go to the notebook and take a look. And if I now go to my default project in Notable, and you do have to tell ChatGPT what is your default project. Here we go. This is called ChatGPT Playground in my case. I go to Federal Debt Analysis 1, which was last updated 1 or 2 minutes ago. And what are we going to see? Now, if you're familiar with Jupyter, this won't look so strange. The way that Notable makes things look is a little funny at first, but it works. Here we have the code that it used, and it creates a data frame. And we can even see that the date is the index of this data frame. Right? Now it's saying, let's get the start date from daytime now to PD offset years equals 30. So it understood when I said, I want the last 3 decades of data, it understood that 3 decades is 30 years. Right? And then it's going to set the style of the grid. And here we go. We have a plot showing time against federal debt. And then the analysis. Right? The most noticeable increase appears to occur in the last decade where the slope of the line becomes steeper. Not too shabby. Thank you, ChatGPT. You did a pretty good job there. Okay, let's move on to the second question, which was very similar to the first one. So I'm going to say, in the same notebook, actually, I'm going to paste this, and then I will read it out loud to you. In the same notebook, download this other data, which are interest and payments on the federal debt, because, right, the federal debt is not just something that the U.S. government has to pay back. It has to pay it back with interest. And so let's see what those interest payments were, and let's put that in a separate data frame. And then let's use Seaborn once again to plot the payments over the last 3 decades. So it's going to sit, it's going to think, it's going to do its thing. It seems to be thinking for quite a while right now. Something went wrong. Oh no. Now I have to add, every time I do this, I get a different response. I get different code, I get different analysis, different errors, and that was one of them. And it just happens. And maybe it's because it's a new technology, maybe because it's all statistical in nature, right? But like, you cannot expect to get exactly the same answer each time you do something. In fact, you can't expect to get the same answer anytime you do something multiple times in ChatGPT. Now, in a previous video, I showed you that if I ask it to download data and put in a data frame, it will probably do that in a separate Jupyter notebook. So I made sure to say in the same notebook, I want to download and use this, because if I had not said that, well, you know, computers take you at your word, and it might have been a little messy. So if we look at what it's doing here, once again, it's doing a download. It's doing a read CSV of the URL. So here it is downloading. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Once again, lots of data, lots of data, lots of data. That's lots of scroll in action there. All right. And that's using Notable to do what? I see some saying the style of the plot. So here's the plotting. The plot thickens. Ha, ha, ha. Only if it has a very thick marker, right? That's right. That's right. My children have to suffer from these jokes all the time, and you get to watch them on YouTube as many times as you want. So basically, we're going to get the data, we're going to plot the data, and then we're going to get an analysis of the data. All right. So there, it looks like it's done plotting. All right. Now I could follow this along in the notebook, right? I could take a look at that, and it actually happens in pretty close to real time. Here we go, right? So here's the data. Here it's doing the plot. Here we see the interest payments. And now what is it doing? Well, now it's writing its analysis because, I did ask it to write some analysis. Also note that I asked it to write it in Markdown, and it knows how to do that. It knows how to use Markdown and format things inside of our notebook. Pretty snazzy, I'd say. All right, and it's almost done writing its analysis. So financial analysts, here we go. You have met your match. I've created a plot, and here we go. Now we have analysis. The above plot represent interest payments, and so on and so on and so forth. And we can see once again, it knew how to do 30 years. Also notice that it set up titles, interest payments on the federal debt over the last 3 decades. And here it said, total federal debt over the last 3 decades. It's being pretty intelligent about this. So then I said, okay, here's what I want to do. I want to use Seaborn to create a scatter plot. Now, a scatter plot is going to take 2 types of data, and it's going to, plot them against each other. One will be the x-axis, and one will be the y-axis. And then we can see if there is any sort of correlation between them. And I even asked it not only to use Seaborn to create a scatter plot, but I asked it to include a regression line in this plot so we can get a sense of, what is that line and how well is it sloped. And then I say, what correlations do you see? Describe your findings in Markdown. Now, there are a few different pieces to this. First of all, notice I did not tell it which data frames to use. I did not tell it which columns to use. I did not tell it what types to use. All I said was compare the federal debt and the interest payments on the debt in the last 3 decades, and then include a regression line. It had to be smart enough to join these together into a single data frame. It had to be smart enough to figure out how to create a scatter plot and from which columns, and that it's going to join on the dates, and then how to do a regression line because the standard scatter plot does not include a regression line. So what is it doing behind the scenes here? Well, it's going to, here we go, we can take a look here. It's going to merge the 2 data frames on date. It is smart enough to do that, and then create the scatter plot with a regression. And you'll notice that every time it writes code, it's very nice and polite about it. It actually includes, here I'll show you here because it's easier to read, it includes comments. Set the title and labels, create the scatter plot, and look at that. There is our scatter plot right there, including the regression line. Pretty snazzy. All right, and that says the scatter plot compares the total federal debt and the interest payments on and on. Now, I should add, someone in the comments on Bamboo Weekly said, hey, it didn't do the last 30 years. It did I think it was the last 3 years. Sometimes these things make mistakes. Right? Sometimes you do have to check. You do have to know what you're doing to use this as a tool. It's not enough to just say, hey, go and run this. If you don't know what you're doing and garbage in, garbage out. If you don't know what you're doing and you just give it some sort of a prompt and you don't check what's going on then, it could be bad. Okay, so it's done a pretty good job here. I decided to be a little mean then. And I decided I was going to look at a different data set. And this one is definitely tougher. And this is major foreign holders of treasury securities in billions of dollars. Meaning each month for the last 13 months, most recently in January 2023, how many billions of dollars do various countries own of US debt? Meaning how much in bonds have they bought, in treasuries have they bought? Now, what's hard about this data? Well, you can see there's like a title here at the top that's not very well structured. You've got this stuff at the bottom, all these notes and everything. You've got grand total. So grand total, well, we don't want to include that because that'll throw us off. There is no country named grand total. And then the best part is these column headers are taking up 2 lines apiece, with even 3 lines if you include the lines. July 2022, June 2022. And this country name here, oh my God. So I said, let's see how much we can torture ChatGPT to retrieve this and turn it into something. Now, you could, and indeed I did at first, try it, and it went very poorly. So in the same notebook, create a data frame based on the data at, which describes how many billions of dollars are held by, in US debt are held by various countries. Only keep those lines with country names in the first column, which should be used as an index. Okay, let's see how it does. This is different than what I actually ended up writing, as you'll see. But it's very, very interesting to see how ChatGPT approaches these problems, which is sometimes identical to what I would do, and sometimes wildly different. Now, if you had to somehow parse this, what would you do? My feeling is I would get rid of these first few lines. We don't need them. I would even get rid of these lines with the headers and create my own headers. I would then get rid of everything from grand total until the end, right? Because we don't need that stuff either. And then I would basically say, okay, use these as country names, use these columns. We'll start with January 2023 and go back in time month by month, and then let's hope. I actually went through many iterations to try to describe to ChatGPT what it should do here. So if we look here, what is it doing? Okay, well, use notable. It seems like there was an error trying to parse the data. The start of the data could not be found. Yeah, let's try a different approach to parse the data. So first of all, holy cow, right? Like, so what did it do here? What did it try to do? Well, it tried to parse the data. So it tried to just get the lines. It used requests, not a bad way to go, because it wants to get the raw data and then figure out how to parse it. It's like, well, what if I just split it on new lines? Yeah, that's not going to work so well. Like, it's trying to enumerate, it's checking with country, not going to work so well. Right? And then it said, well, what if I use requests here? And yeah, let's try something else. Another error trying to parse the data. The data could not be read as expected, which might be due to the data not being formatted as a tab-separated file. Let's try another approach. Now, I have to say, this is super impressive to me. I mean, a person I would expect to try one thing, then another thing, then another thing. But really, an AI chatbot is trying different things. It's aware of the fact that the parsing did not work well, and then it's going to try again. Wow, like, holy moly, that's pretty great. So what is it doing here? Well, it's going to, like, get the data into lines. It's going to remove the header and footer lines, not too shabby, and then it's going to break each line, and it's going to do it on space. Yeah, that's going to give it some trouble because there are actually country names with spaces in them. And so it's going to be like, I don't know what you want from me here, right? It might work partly, but it's not going to work so well. And, oh, I've successfully created a data frame. Let's see. Now, I should add, again, each time you do this, it's going to work a little differently. However, I am skeptical this will work well. And in fact, I think my skepticism is well warranted because what the heck? How many columns is it creating here? Oh, this is going to go poorly. This is going to go poorly. I'm just going to stop generating. All right. So now what am I going to do? Well, I could cry, but instead I'm going to use what I came up with here, and I'll read it to you as it parses through it. I'm going to say here, let's start over with this file. So in the same notebook, right? So in the same notebook. I guess it doesn't have to be the same notebook, but sure. All right. So what did I tell it to do? Download data from this URL before parsing the file. Remove everything before the word Japan. Also remove the line that starts with grand total and everything that follows it. Create data frame from the text that remains. The data frame does not have any headers. Interpret the first line as data. Each line consists of a country name and floating point numbers. The fields are separated by 2 or more space characters. The first field in each line, the country name, should be made the index. The remaining values will all be floating point numbers. The data frame's column name should be a combination of month, name, and year, starting with January 2023 and going down 1 month at a time until reaching the final column. I had to be so incredibly precise with this description, and it still did not always work, I must admit. I'm guessing, hoping that this will work, because I did put it through the ringer a few times, but oh boy, each part of this turned out to be really challenging, right? How can I get only the appropriate rows? How can I get only the appropriate columns? How can it treat the country names as the columns? How can it treat like the numbers as they should be? How can I get the columns to be named starting January 2023 and then going down? We as humans understand that we can go down, down, down. So after January 2023, it'll be December 2022, then November 2022, and so on and so forth. This is a logical thing to tell a person. Kind of hard to expect a computer to understand it. And that's why we use programming languages, because they are precise, because they are specific, because they are exact. And natural language just isn't. So did it work? Well, let's take a look here. What did it do? So it imported a request, and it actually did what I asked it to do, right? So it found Japan and removed everything until there. It found grand total, removed everything after that. And then it split the rest of the lines, and it looked for, look at that, it's using regular expressions. When I said 2 or more space characters, it said, sure, I'll use regular expressions because that's a great way to describe 2 or more. And now it's thinking and churning. What the heck is it doing? Let's take a look. Here we go. Looks like it's getting the data frame there, right? It's splitting it up and playing all sorts of games with it. All right. And then it seems like there was an error trying to assign the column names. The error suggests the number of new column names does not match the number of columns of the data frame. This might be to a miscalculation in months or years. Let's try to correct this. Again, wow. Wow, right? It understands that there was an error there. And instead of just giving up and saying, well, your code was bad, I'm going to try again and try to fulfill your every need, right? So it's going to churn through things a little bit. And it's just going to probably be a slight difference. Oh, look at this. For year in years, which will range from 2023 to 2023 minus numbers. Oh my God, looks like it worked because we're getting all these different columns here, getting all this different data here. Here is the data frame. And if I'm not mistaken, oh no, it did not get the dates correct. Once again, it got the dates correct in the past. It really, really did. It got them wrong in this particular case. Oh no. Oh, actually, it did okay. January 2023, February 2023, March 2023, and then it got to like January 2022. All right, I don't know what it was thinking. It like did not get it correct, but it was really, really, really close. Okay, so now we can play with this a little bit, but I'm actually going to ignore that mistake because again, sometimes my queries worked perfectly and sometimes they did not, and this is why we have to check them. This is why we have to look at them a little bit. Okay, I want to move on to the next things that I did with this because it's not going to be affected by anything we did. So then I said, using Seaborn, create a pie chart for showing what proportion of debt was owned by each country in January 2023. Do this for the top 15 countries. All others should be lumped into a single pie segment named Others. So this should be relatively straightforward, right? Oh, it's going to give me like a little like report at the end. Please let me know if you need any further assistance. Oh, well, that's nice of you. All right. So using Seaborn, create a pie chart showing what proportion of debt was owned by each country in January 2023. Do this for the top 15 countries. All others should be lumped into a single segment. That means it has to be smart enough to take the top 15 countries, right? And then it's going to lump all the others and it's going to create a pie chart. This is the sort of thing that a person who knows how to program in Seaborn and in Pandas can do without too much difficulty. Now, this does raise the question, does this mean that someone who does not know how to program could actually use ChatGPT to do this? And the answer is maybe. Maybe, right? I would say that in some cases, someone could do it, but they're going to need the help of an expert to double check what's going on because you are going to get mistakes, you are going to get weird errors, and you don't want those, right? And it's very hard to detect if you're not an error, if you're not an expert. So I'm going to see here, what did it do? All right. Oh, not valid UUIDs. It's giving me some trouble here with plotting, with notable. Now, folks, this is very, very new, right? This has been out for a little more than a week, right? And I know the notable people have been working on their plugin for a while, and I know that their project has been working for a while. ChatGPT has been out for a while. But all of these combinations of things and looking at all the crazy stuff that I'm going to throw at it, that's been available for a very short period of time. So let's see what's going on here. Did notable succeed? It seems like there was an error trying to add the others category. Might be a different data type. Let's try to correct this by ensuring that all data in the series are of the same type. Again, very, very clever. It's seeing that there's an error, and it's using a pretty logical, reasonable approach to try to undo that error. So what's it going to do here? It's probably going to try to like do an as type. Yeah, it's going to, here we go, float. So top 15 of others is going to be float of others. So it's going to try to turn that into that, and it's going to plot pie with auto %, and I think this might actually work. All right, it's thinking, oh, there was an error. Okay, fine. So this did not work. I will just show you in my solution, it did actually work. And I'm telling you, right, I typed in, I cut and pasted, copied and pasted exactly the same things. And this is what I got, right? This is what I got here. So it was exactly the same sort of parsing, but something somewhere was just ever so slightly different. What if I do something? Let me just do one little thing. Oh, no, it's going to try. It's going to try. Let's correct it by finding others in the same cell. So it's still going, trying to correct our problem here. Here I was thinking that I would need to give it a nudge and a help in the right direction. I might still need to. All right. So this is not a panacea, right? But it does do some, oh, it seems like there's an error. Now look at this. It's still giving me some trouble. And I found that sometimes, not always, but sometimes it would just get into this infinite loop of trying. And that's exactly what's going on here. Let's try to correct this by ensuring all data are of the same type. Let's try to correct this by ensuring that all data in the series are of the same type. That's going to cause some trouble. How about this? Let's remove any rows in the data frame that contain non-numeric values. Heaven help us. It's going to like destroy the whole data frame, right? But let's hope that that's not the case. All right. Um, and then assume I'm going to try the pie chart once again, and then I'm going to show you one or two other things that I did with it, just because it was kind of fun. But again, it's non-deterministic. Like, it's deterministic in like the big sense of things. But very, very, very often I found that it was just like not doing the right thing, or it would do the right thing, do the right thing, do the right thing like 10 times, and then it would not do the right thing. All right, it looks like it's done. Maybe, I hope, I think. If I go here, the data frame is clean now, contains only rows with numeric values. All right, so here's the clean data. All right, watch this. It's going to have no rows in it, and then it'll be very clean. It's going to be bad. Doesn't have to show everything. Let's go down here in the actual data frame. Oh, no. Look, we're doing okay, actually. We are doing okay. So I'm going to now give it, once again, my query from before to create the pie chart. So I'm going to say stop generating. I always feel so rude when I say stop generating. I'm like, shut up, chatbot. But like, it doesn't have feelings. So let's see if we can do this. And if this works, fantastic. And then I'm going to do one or two other things that were even more kind of wild and fun to do, which gave it increasing levels of difficulty. Let's see what it's going to try here. Hopefully it's going to be okay. All right, so it's doing here, do the pie plot, right? Do the pie plot, do all this, and I think we should be all right. I hope. It's going to add it all up together. Now you see here, if we look at, oh, look at this. There we go. So I needed to do some data cleaning. And so I asked ChatGPT to clean up my data for me, and all was good. As you can see, Japan holds the largest proportion of the debt, followed by China and the United Kingdom. The others category, which includes all countries not in the top 15, holds a significant portion of the debt. Amazing. Okay, now, here's what I want to do. Create a pie chart showing what proportion of debt was owned by each continent rather than each country. That is, we should have one pie slice for Asia, another for Europe, another for Africa. Any countries that cannot be classified can remain named. Use any information at your disposal to make a good guess regarding which continent each country is in. All right. If you aren't sure, it's okay to guess. Now, why do I add that last sentence? Because again and again, use Zapier. Okay, that I did not expect. That I definitely did not expect. I found it actually. I could find. Oh my god. Okay, I did not expect that one bit. All right, so I'm gonna. It did use any information at its disposal, so I can't really be upset with it. The reason I'm doing this though is because it would give me all of these this feedback saying, as a large language model, I don't really know what country what continent every country is in, and I'd have to like push it. Okay, so let's see. Let's try use any information. Oh, here we go. Use any information in your current database, current knowledge base, without turning to the internet to make a good guess. Let's see if that maybe, oh, let me stop generating, and I'm going to do one more thing here. And then you're going to see it's going to refuse all out. I can see it's in a bad mood today. It's just going to all out refuse. We'll first need to map each country. Okay, this is not available, so we'll have to use an external source. Oh, okay. Oh, PyCountry convert. Okay, this actually is what happened to me. So it basically said, oh, if you need to know, this, I did not expect this at all. It was working great. The last time that I did it for the Bamboo Weekly solution, it said, oh, well, you should just use PyCountry convert. And then it wrote the code to do that. So here I'm going to say, put this code. Please note this code might not work perfectly for all countries. Okay, so that's pretty amazing. So I'm going to say here, use this code in Jupyter and then produce the pie chart that I asked for. Okay, and then whatever it gives me, it might be great, it might be terrible. Oh, I don't have, oh, for crying out loud. Okay. However, I can create a simple mapping based on, okay, stop. Oh, I'll create a mapping of countries to continents, then use this mapping to create a new event. In other words, it can do it. I just needed to push it. And I really sometimes during my experimenting, I'd be like, push, like I'd say, you know how to do it. I trust you. It'd be like, oh, well, if you trust me, I guess I'll do it. Right? Here we go. Look at this. So it's going to map country to continent. It suddenly it knows how to do this. How nice of it, right? So it's going to map a whole bunch of countries to different continents here, right? And then, which it's pretty accurate about. What do you know? It actually knows something, right? Of course it knows countries and continents. These don't tend to change more than once every few, 10 or, 100 million years. So I think we're, well, at least the continents don't. Countries, a little more frequently. All right. So it's going to do its thing here. It's going to put together all this stuff. Great, map the countries to continents. It's going to put that together in the code. Create a new data frame. It does that. Create the pie chart. It does that. And look at this. A little encouragement, a little pushing. Ta-da! It's able to do the right thing. Actually, I'm pretty sure it'll do the right thing. I'm not 100% convinced it'll do the pie chart, but I'm pretty darn sure. Now, when I did this in Bamboo Weekly, it worked great. And then the actual thing, I'll show you, the actual thing it gave me was this. No, actually, it was okay. It was okay on that front, right? Oh, here we go. There we go. Asia, Australia, Europe, North America, other South America. Beautiful, beautiful. Let's do one last thing here. By the way, there was something else that I did with a line chart. It just wasn't the best. Okay, here was the one that gave me the most fun and the most difficulty. To the best of your ability, right? Using information in your existing knowledge base, classify each of the countries as a democracy or a dictatorship. Create a pie chart showing what proportion of debt was owned by each type of government. If you can think of additional classifications, feel free to use those. Now, it's going to be like, I'm a large language model. I don't know how to classify countries, right? There's a complex task. It can be nuanced. We can make a rough classification. Now, I want to note, half the time, it was happy to do this. Half the time, it was like, I will not. I cannot do that. You have got to be kidding me. All right, here we go. So I'm going to create a mapping of countries to their general political system. Now, sometimes when it did this, also I should add, it got itself into an infinite loop. I know you would think, how can a chatbot get into an infinite loop? And yet it does. Because, right, it's going to create, oh, here we go, country to system. This is a little different than what I'd seen in the past. So here it says, like, some of these are dictatorships, some of these are democracies, some of these are hybrid regimes, right? Some of these are military juntas. Right? Oh, it's doing a pretty good job. Pretty good job here. It's different every time, folks. Different every time, folks. It is amazing to see. So it's going to create this mapping. And you can see how it was like a little reluctant to do that. This is complex. I don't really know. Is this the sort of thing I really want to do? And I'm not sure if this is part of the safety. I'm not sure if this is like it trying to be sort of humble. I'm not sure if it's because it can't access the internet. I don't know. But it looks to me like it's going to do a lot better. See, what I showed, what I want here, this is what happened when I tried this query before. It said unclassified. And this was when it said, I won't. And then I said, you actually do know. I insist, even if you're wrong, that you produce this pie chart. And it gave me a pie chart with 100% unclassified. Right? So here, it looks like, oh, look at this. Here's the pie chart. Pretty darn cool. So I hope, there we go. Pretty amazing, right? All right. So what have we learned? First of all, we learned that this plugin, ChatGPT plus Notable, is pretty darn amazing. It makes some very smart decisions, sometimes dumb decisions, but so do people, if you weren't aware of this. It's labeling things correctly. It's joining data frames together correctly. Sometimes it makes errors, and sometimes it corrects those errors correctly, right? Sometimes it will back up and correct the errors, and sometimes it's like, I really don't know what to do here. So there are all sorts of issues and possibilities. When it comes to doing things that are a little outside of the chatbot's comfort zone, it will tell you that, and you sometimes need to push. And sometimes just by, randomness and statistical rolling of the dice, it will agree, it won't agree, you'll get a different answer. So here's the bottom line. It's amazing. It's really mind-blowing. I've never seen anything like this before. It is not a replacement for programmers, data scientists. My job as a Python and data science trainer is safe. Your job, if you're a Python developer or data scientist, is safe. But much as my accountant many years ago had to start using calculators in Excel in order to compete with other accountants, you, as a programmer or data scientist, are going to have to learn how to use AI to compete with other programmers and to do your job. And so learning how these systems work, where their advantages and disadvantages, strong points and weak points are, very, very important. I hope that this was fun and interesting for you. It was certainly fun and interesting for me to record and go through. If you like current events and pandas, please do subscribe to Bamboo Weekly. It is fun, as I said, for me to write, and hopefully fun for you to read. I'm going to put a link to this chat, which is a new feature, and to my Jupyter Notebook from Notable in the show notes for this YouTube video. And I very, very, very much encourage you to give me comments and feedback and thoughts, and I'll be back more real soon about Python, pandas, and what we can do with it. Thanks so much for watching. See you again soon.